Enzo, can I just ask you, as we go into the Q&A section, you said that CHP has never got the attention that it merits, particularly from policymakers, and I would not disagree with you either. But why do you think that is?
Well, a number of reasons, Kelvin. First, it is, I believe, a market where, in terms of both demand and supply, there are so many players, and so the market is not concentrated, it's very spread around, again, both supply and demand. And it's been a niche application, very popular in Europe, for example, and then has become a sort of journey, global journey in many other countries. So I believe another reason could be the fact that we have never organized ourselves in a way that we have done, for example, as CWC. So I believe the ability to lobby with stakeholders, with policymakers, is something that needs proactivity. So I believe that also the creation of CWC represents a change for many companies and associations that have, of course, made a lot of efforts in the past years and decades. But I believe that all together we can do much better. And the existence of CWC means exactly that, more associations, more companies that are protagonists out there and try every day on their own to make a change, all together to produce an impact that is much, much wider and much, much stronger than it has been before.
Mm-hmm. So really you're talking about, the coalition brings us a collaboration and a sort of unity that wasn't there before. Perhaps the sector was perhaps a bit disparate, and obviously in competition a lot of these companies, but now they're collaborating with one goal. Having said that, CHP has never got the attention that it deserves against the backdrop outlined by Mr. Sadamori. Do you think that's going to change suddenly a whole lot sooner rather than later in the coming? I think you mentioned 20 months. Do you think, against the backdrop, that suddenly there's a focusing of minds on energy efficiency and resilience, that CHP and cogeneration is going to suddenly find itself pushed up the policymaker agenda? And this is to you, Enzo, or feel free to jump in, David.
Yeah, I think that we need to. Because now is the time that we are kind of reminded of the crucial importance of energy efficiency, and in our net zero roadmap, we point out that efficiency must improve by the rate of 4% per year, which is almost a kind of a double of the rate in recent years. And also we need to see more opportunities for the low carbon fuels in both providing electricity and heat. And also what is important is that as we see more variable renewables and like wind and solar, the value of storage in the entire electricity system will increase at a very rapid pace. And actually we believe that as the world goes into the electricity systems. By the way, with the more electrification, the role of electricity becomes more important. But as this electrification happens, in parallel with the higher penetration of the variable wind and solar, we see that the demand for the flexibility in the power systems will even grow much faster than the entire electricity demand itself. So all in all, I think that there is a role that the cogeneration systems around the world need to play in this the new energy systems. And I think and I hope we've been promoting the energy efficiency measures in various the events, conferences, and also the various publications. But it's really hard to see the very rapid acceleration in energy efficiency. So I hope that the COGEN could be one force behind the kind of faster deployments of the energy efficiency technologies and also the new types of low carbon energy sources.
Mm-hmm. Has energy efficiency been rather overlooked in recent? I mean, everyone talks about energy efficiency, but in terms of doing something actually positive and encouraging towards it, has it been, you know, not top of the agenda, but just not far enough to the top of the agenda in recent years? And is that suddenly, you know, almost pivoted on its head in recent months?
Well, Kelvin, I would just jump in to say that I think energy efficiency is always understated, under-recognized, underappreciated, and even more so, energy efficiency on the generation side. There's a lot of focus on end-use energy efficiency, and I find a lot of people, when they say energy efficiency, that's the only thing they need. And that's a mistake, because there are, as we all know from cogeneration, huge opportunities on the generation side to not only use the fuels that we're using today efficiently in a way that not only reduces their greenhouse gas emissions, but clearly saves end users money. But in addition to that, as we do make the shift to the decarbonized fuels that were mentioned in the video, hydrogen, biomethane, we're going to want to use those as efficiently as possible. And I think there's a complete lack of recognition on the part of policymakers that that transition should, in almost every instance we can think of, be using cogeneration precisely because it is efficient on the generation side.
But that's something you surely would expect to change then in the coming months, that attitude from policymakers, because suddenly there's a very sharp focus in mind. Or are you not actually so sure that even presented with something as stark as what's going on in the world just now, they will?
Excuse me, I'm skeptical policymakers will suddenly recognize this without organizations like the COGEN World Coalition coming and talking to them and making the case for it. I mean, that's the policymakers need both experts, as we see at the International Energy Agency, but I think also they need the people who understand the business to come and explain it to them. They need to hear from not only cogeneration manufacturers and service providers, but also the people who have installed cogeneration units who can speak to the benefits and who are looking. Many of those end users, I think, are looking, certainly as we see this in the United States, are looking to decarbonize in addition to having the other benefits that cogeneration provides, like resilience and reliability. I think certainly for many policymakers, as we've been talking about, the national security measures are of utmost importance at the moment. Cogeneration delivers them all.
Mm. I believe, Kelvin, the funny thing, we can talk about sort of silent revolution for CHP, because a lot of policymakers in many countries are, let's say, distracted by other things, and maybe also other lobbyists have been better than us in the past. In the meanwhile, there is a silent revolution, because bottom line, again, thousands of industrial, commercial companies and farmers and everything have been investing and continue to, prepare feasibility studies and, try to jump over very complicated permitting processing and, financing this kind of solutions. So I think there is a mismatch between what happens, top of the world, and again, among the policymakers and what is, the bottom line of end users and companies. Mm-hmm.
And also, I would like to point out the fact that we expect that the natural gas is already very expensive at this moment. It has been very expensive in the fourth quarter of last year, but because we expect rather kind of a difficult situation because of this the Russian the invasion to Ukraine. We expect to see some difficult and kind of a tight natural gas markets in the coming maybe 1 year or 2 years. So of course, it's not good in terms of the energy affordability, but we hope that that will contribute to urge the private investors to invest more money into the efficiency in order to save the use of natural gas.
Yeah, I was going to ask if I can ask you, David. So the Russian oil and gas situation, on one hand, presents an opportunity for cogen to step into, but at the same time, surely the fact that an awful lot of cogen is gas related, is there a challenge there for you as well? Yeah, what do you feel about the coming months, and is there something that might hinder that opportunity being seized just by the gas situation?
Well, my observation about the market, at least in the US, is that there are many customers out there, certainly over the last number of years, who've been very focused on being able to achieve long-term carbon reductions. And they recognize that combined heat and power delivers short-term emission reductions. They've been worried about whether there's a long-term pathway. And I think what we're seeing in this country is very strong bipartisan support for developing clean hydrogen, for developing biomethane. And I think that's going to be important. And of course, those things will also help with national security as well. They don't necessarily help immediately, but over time, if you're worried about dependence on foreign sources of energy, and you can produce biomethane or you can produce clean hydrogen domestically, that's a powerful direction that allows you to achieve the national security objectives as well as climate change objectives. And that's where I think countries and individual buyers will be looking to go, certainly driven in part by the short-term concerns about prices. But I definitely think they also have the long-term picture in mind and recognize that their generation facilities are long-term assets. And we're dealing with a world in which, yes, national security concerns are preeminent at the moment, but I don't think that's caused the other issues that buyers tend to think about. Reliability, affordability, of course, and their long-term climate objectives. That hasn't gone away. And again, as I said earlier, I think the great thing about cogeneration is that it can deliver all of those benefits starting today.
Yeah, yeah. Mr. Sadamori, if I can come back to you, you mentioned a couple of times heat. And I wonder, how important is the issue of heat? Because obviously it's an intrinsic part of what the benefits that cogeneration can offer. Is that another one? Perhaps a wee bit like energy efficiency that is overlooked, yet is a massive part of the problem, and one that is perhaps more imminently addressable than most. How important is it to tackle heat?
I think that is hugely important because the heat is the sector that consumes the largest portion of the global energy overall. But when we look at the entire kind of energy markets, we are seeing the very rapid progress in decarbonization by the very fast deployments of wind and solar, other renewables in the electricity sector. But we have not seen anything the equivalent in the area of heat, both in terms of the residential heating, but also more importantly, kind of industrial heating that require very high degrees. And we all know that the industry is a kind of a typical hard to abate sectors. So I think that in that respect, the kind of decarbonizing the heat sector is also a very important part, and that's far lagging behind electricity. By the way, even the electricity decarbonization is progressing quite rapidly. That's not fast enough to achieve the net zero pathway, and therefore we need to work even harder in terms of decarbonizing the heat sector overall of the global economy to achieve to stay on track to the net zero pathway.
Mm-hmm. And Enzo, if we're talking about industrial decarbonisation, is that perhaps one of the most significant wins? Not an easy win necessarily, but a most significant win where cogeneration can make a huge, measurable difference.
Absolutely, Kelvin. There are many companies in the pharmaceutical, food, beverage, plastic, chemical, and you name it, sectors that have already invested and are currently still evaluating possibilities to invest in cogen because of all the benefits that we've been talking about. And I believe it's still a way, especially in certain countries, to reduce the impact of I mean, to have a better decarbonization, because, I mean, take, for example, Eastern Europe, where a lot of energy is still produced with coal. I mean, the shift between, you know, coal and natural gas, in any case, has a positive impact in terms of decarbonization. Of course, it's a path toward net zero, and that's why we all talk about energy transition, because it cannot be, you know, just like this. It requires time, and also because these kind of companies have balance sheets, and they have to respond, you know, to shareholders, to the financial market. So I think it's COGEN it's already been evaluated like one of the weapons that this company have to, you know, reduce carbon emissions and at the same time have an impact in terms of energy efficiency and reduction of in terms of cost of energy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the energy transition, or the phrase energy transition, means different things to different people, and everyone's on a sort of a vaguely different stage of their own transition, whether it's in their company or their country or their continent. We had a question actually from someone that was asking specifically, what's the COGEN picture looking like in the Middle East? And perhaps, you know, Enzo or David, you could look at that. But I'm wondering how it looks across the world. We're going to hear in very soon 5 different projects, and they are global projects. But you know, what does the picture look like compared to Europe and Asia, and then maybe, you know, South and Latin America, and, you know, perhaps even, you know, Australia, and also if someone would like to tackle the Middle East specifically?
It's for me, or
it's for yourself or David.
Okay. Yeah. So I think it depends a lot on what kind of geographies you're talking about, what kind of industries you're in. There are still a lot of countries in which just the production of electricity is a value, and the growth in the population represents an opportunity, at the same time a constraint. So, for example, Africa as a continent, but also South America are in this stage, and probably a lot of Asian countries, especially Southeast Asian countries. I believe together with Japan, Europe is, you know, the continent where energy transition means giving to companies and families and households the possibility to save money on energy, while at the same time reducing the impact of the decarbonization. So probably the United States, together with Europe and Japan, are an example in terms of how sophisticated the energy transition can be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and David, presumably a key part of the coalition is a sharing of this knowledge among, you know, companies and countries, so one can learn from the other and adopt the best practice.
I think that's what I've been most impressed by in the conversations that we've had in setting up the COGEN World Coalition, is that different parts of the world and different parts of the cogeneration industry are at different places in this energy transition. Some are relatively early on in it, others, as Enzo was indicating about Europe, at a much more sophisticated level. And so I absolutely believe the coalition is very helpful for that kind of knowledge sharing and learning. I would just also say about the thermal energy picture that you asked about earlier, that I think this is an area that few who've paid attention to climate change, except the most in-depth experts, have really thought about. And I think this is where COGEN offers a huge opportunity. Yes, electrification is clearly a technology that can be used to provide thermal energy, but cogeneration delivers those same benefits, and especially when combined with the decarbonized fuels, can do so while achieving the big climate reductions that we need to achieve, and delivering the reliability of delivery that, unfortunately, because of more extreme weather events, we're going to continue to need to have.
Mm-hmm. And Mr. Sadamori, that spirit of collaboration that David's just talked about there to achieve the United Climate Goals, are you seeing more of that, throughout the energy industry as the way forward? Are you seeing, coalitions and companies and countries even, coming together and working together towards, more of a common goal?
I think in general, the sense, yes. And this is because the world energy systems or the energy systems of individual countries are becoming a lot more complex. And it is becoming a lot more difficult to ensure the stability of the power systems and the energy market systems. And that's something totally different from the past. If we take a look at the electricity sector, it was dominated by the large scale, the vertically integrated, the utility. And then the government role is to simply tell the electric power company to not to cause blackouts, and that's it. That was it. While we are seeing the kind of unbundled competitive electricity market systems, it has become a lot more complex. And actually, this is the area that the deregulations or the competitive markets has led to a lot more regulations, a lot more complex regulations in the power system management. So for instance, in the IEA, we recently started to be the kind of administrative role of the coalition of the electric utility regulators, what is called the RITA. Renewable, that's a kind of the global the group alliance to accelerate the clean energy transitions in the power sector, and we need to learn a lot from each other how the market systems can achieve the higher share of variable renewables without undermining the electricity security. But also, there are so many new technologies that can play a role and that should play a role. And therefore, so as the world moves to more kind of a complex, the energy systems with the new technologies, the fast appearing, we consider that the international the cooperation and the best practice learning is becoming a lot more important, and the IEA would like to play a role in this picture.
Mm-hmm. Enzo, we've had a question about biomethane, and the questioner says it's gaining momentum in Brazil. How do you see the perspectives of for biomethane in the CHP industry in Europe, the US, and Japan? What role is biomethane going to play? What role is it playing at the moment, and how is it going to?
I believe, Kelvin, it's going to be one of the next big things, and probably it is coming even before the hydrogen for a number of reasons. So, for example, as AB Energy, we have already invested in this kind of sector, and we are already deploying solutions. But I believe overall, it's a kind of application technology solution that has been accelerated, unfortunately, by a very bad event like the invasion of Ukraine, because it has caused in many governments around the world the clearness that we have to become more independent in a general sense. So not just from Russian gas. Generally, energy systems have to become more independently. And so biogas has been, so the production, the biogas to electrification has been a very well-known application for decades. And so translating the electrification into the upgrade of biomethane, it's a solution that is out there with just waiting for feed-in tariffs and incentives, and in general a decisive push from nations and governments, and we're seeing this.
You mentioned hydrogen there, and I think we've done very well to get almost 55 minutes into this and no one's yet mentioned hydrogen, but now we've got a question about it. And it says, so it's asking you, how does the availability of hydrogen for power generation? Well, it's limited, as we know at the moment. How does the coalition intend to bring CHP up the hydrogen agenda? You could flip that on its head and ask, how are you going to bring hydrogen into the CHP agenda? I would suggest.
Sure.
But either way, Enzo, away you go. Let's stay with you as you mentioned hydrogen.
Sure. No, I mean, as COGEN World Coalition, we are fuel agnostic. So in reality, we care about the technology, we care about the CHP, the COGEN. Of course, many of us are interested in different fuels, and hydrogen, of course, represents something for the future. Now, if you ask me, my private opinion, I believe that hydrogen is something that needs more time to arrive, especially on a widespread scale, for a number of reasons, economical and many others. But as COGEN World Coalition, we would welcome any initiative related to hydrogen. So I don't know who was the question, but there are many of our members that have already invested in hydrogen, and we would, as an association, again, we would be pleased to welcome other players and members that have specific agenda or wants to promote anything related to hydrogen.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Sadamori, what's the IEA's view on hydrogen,
yes,
specifically with the view to
so
CHP?
the IEA has been working on on hydrogen and for kind of additional resources since its publication of Future of Hydrogen report in 2019, which was reported to the Japanese G20 presidency. And one of the key messages there is that, of course, we see that we saw some false starts in hydrogen, and there were some hypes in the past, but we consider that this time it's real because there is a serious kind of industry's interest and commitments and investments in this sector. So, and we see hydrogen as a contributor, kind of a very important energy carrier that can solve many problems in terms of the energy storage, and also the ways to solve the problems of the hard-to-abate sectors like industries or the long-haul transport. And one of the important point that we made in that the hydrogen report is that what we need to do immediately is to expand, scale up the consumption of hydrogen. So in that respect, the use of hydrogen in the existing energy infrastructure is a very important part of the solution. So maybe at the beginning, we may not need to mind so much of the colors of the hydrogen, but by expanding its use, and then that would contribute to the kind of lowering the costs of the entire systems using hydrogen, then it can wait for the real green hydrogen to be more competitive. So I think that at least at the beginning, we consider that blue hydrogen with CCS in a very energy-rich resource countries like Middle East will be competitive, and it can become even more useful if coupled with the substantial high carbon prices and other the policy incentives that Enzo just described. So I think that the hydrogen now has a real serious kind of the potential to solve various energy problems, and one of the key factor in leading us to the net zero, the energy future.
Mm.
Kelvin, could I just add something on this point here?
Absolutely, yes.
We published a paper earlier this year, and I'll put it in the answer to the question when I have a moment, where we talked to the equipment manufacturers, CHP equipment manufacturers, about what CHP systems are capable of, how much hydrogen can they use today? And the numbers were, in my mind, surprisingly high. We asked also, when can we having equipment that uses 100% clean hydrogen? And the answer was certainly by 2030 and likely sooner than that. Some appear to already have systems that are capable of doing it. And then most importantly, I thought the really interesting question was, what happens if you have an existing system or one that you're newly installed? What about converting it over time? And at least the equipment manufacturers believe that that can be done at relatively low expense, and it could be done at a time when the equipment is being overhauled anyway as a part of its normal maintenance, so with little disruption. So I thought that was very optimistic about the capacity of combined heat and power to work with clean hydrogen as we begin to produce it. And as Mr. Sadamori says, to lower its price, because clearly the issue here is with both biomethane and with hydrogen. Certainly that's the case in the United States. They can't compete with the price of natural gas today. Can that change over time, and will it change? Yes, I believe it will. But the most important thing is to recognize that CHP systems are not going to be the barrier. They're going to be capable. They can use a lot of hydrogen today. They can use 100% hydrogen in the not too distant future.
We're almost out of time. We need to go to the next section, but one final question, because it's a very direct one, and David, you may know the answer. So I'll ask you: which country currently uses the most CHP? And if you know the answer, why?
I don't know the answer. I think my problem is I'm too parochial. I'm too much focused on the United States. I'm sure that either Enzo or Mr. Sadamori would have a better answer.
Yeah, I make a guess. I don't have the statistics.
Make a guess. A guess is as good as anything. Let's make a guess.
I believe it could be Germany. I believe it could be.
That would be my guess too. Yeah. But why is that? Was the second part of the question? Why is Germany such an early adopter?
For a number of reasons. First, because it's been an early adopter as other European countries, Italy, for example, because of the magnitude of the country, 80 million people, and the vastity in terms of geographies. The diversification in terms of CHP application, both the use of natural gas but also biogas. Germany is by far the country with the highest number of biogas installations in the world, over 12,000. So that would be my guess. Maybe Mr. Sadamori has a statistical answer.
Mr. Sadamori, do you have a statistical answer, or
no? Honestly, I don't know which country. I mean, I have not looked at those data. I was somewhat naturally assuming that kind of the countries in the Northern European region seems to be a kind of a natural fit for those the kind of cogenerations, the systems. But sorry, I don't know the answer. So
no. Well, I think we're all agreed. We've taken a pretty good guess that it's Northern Europe and perhaps even more so Germany. We're at the end of our Q&A. Mr. Sadamori, thank you very much for your keynote speech today. Thank you for joining us.
No, thank you for including me. This was a very interesting exchange. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, David, and thank you, Enzo. Thank you, everyone who sent in a question. We had an awful lot of them. We didn't get through all of them, but we do have a second Q&A, so it might be we can revisit some of the ones we didn't tackle.